So I recently came across a video that mentioned how there are not very many tutorials for audio related to sprinting in Unreal Engine, particularly regarding fading in and out a breathing sound and a sprinting sound. So, because that's like the easiest thing ever, I'm just going to do a super quick tutorial on how to do that. Very easy, very quick, very simple. The method by which I have seen people figure it out is pretty complicated and a little convoluted, so I'm going to show you how to do it way more simply than that. Basically, this is an empty project, there's nothing in it, just a first-person character from the template, and I've written this code here. You can pretty much just copy this if you want to, and it'll work, as long as you know what you're doing, because this is a custom input. This is the sprinting logic, which you don't really care about because the sound effects will be fine with whatever your sprinting setup is. This is the sound effect logic here. Basically, I have an input for sprint, which is held down when I press left shift. When it starts, it will begin the breathing logic. While it is being held down, it'll begin the sprinting logic. And the sprinting logic, just super high speed when I'm holding it down and a little bit higher FOV to show it, and then back to normal when I'm letting go. The audio is using audio components. So what you want to do is you want to have your sounds, you want to have your sprinting sound, and you want to have your not sprinting sound. This is the not sprinting sound. And this is the sprinting sound. And you want to make sure they're both set to loop, which is very easy. Double click on it, come over here to looping, check that. You can set it to a sound effect as well if you want to. Make sure that your other one is also set to looping. I'm going to set that to sound effects also, just because when you have an audio mixer, it's better to put all your sounds in categories. And then in your first person character, who is just a skibbity toilet guy, I guess, with the arms, you want to have audio components. Add, and then audio, and then there it is. This one right here, audio. This says panting, ignore that. It'll just say audio for you, and it is an audio source, which stores a reference to an audio file, which you can then get in your event graph and do things with. So, for example, when I am beginning the game, nothing is changing, nothing is happening, the game's just starting. My COM audio source has a default value set to auto activate. So when I start the game, you'll hear some light breathing because it plays by default. Obviously, this one does not auto activate because you don't want it to do that at the same time. If you do, it'll sound really weird, like this. So what you do basically is you get your audio, you have your audio components, and you set their default value to the audio that you want it to be referencing. So breath tired is panting, so I set that to panting here in the sound thing. You can just find it there or go into wherever it is, drag it in there. And then in COM, same thing. I've got my COM one there, and then those are stored as components, which you can then use. So when I sprint, I start, which is the first frame of holding down the shift key, and that's important because if you do it untriggered or whatever, it'll play it every single frame and then it gets really loud and weird. So started, and then it will fade in the breath tired's audio component. So you just drag out there, fade in, and then it's simple as that. I have the fade in duration to 0.5. I think its default is 1, but 0.5 feels better. You can adjust this if you want. These curves are probably better suited for different things. Linear makes sense because I'm fading in and out at the same time. And so what linear means is that it's a consistent rate for the entire curve. So for these 5 seconds each frame, it will consistently lower the volume the same amount every frame. If I change it to like an S-curve, then it'll start a little bit slower, then a little bit faster, then a little bit slower, and it'll feel a little bit more natural, but it might not sound as good. So linear is fine. While it is fading in the breath tired component, which is the sprinting, it's going to be fading out the breath calm component, which is the normal audio, so he will begin to sound like he is panting a little bit louder while he is not making that noise. And then On completed, which is when I release the left shift, it needs to handle the sprinting logic and the breathing logic. I could just put the breathing logic at the end of the sprinting logic and it would be fine, but it would look weird, so I organized it a little bit with the sequence node. If you're not familiar, the sequence node basically does one thing, and then when that's done, it does another thing, and then that's done, you can have it do another thing, and then another thing. Logically speaking, it is exactly the same as just, taking these and moving them up here. If I were to do this, it would literally have the exact same functionality as that. It's just a little bit more organized this way, so I can keep things in their commented blocks. So when I complete it, sequence 0, it'll fade out the tired while fading in the calm to make him sound normal again. And then when that's done, it will set my default speed and FOV back to normal. So when all is said and done, he's walking, he's breathing. Then when I start sprinting, and then when I release the sprint, and you can do all sorts of other things here too if you want, like, you can make like a sprinting boolean, and then you could basically have it so that like on begin play, you can make sure that there's like, you could have it so like your character is like sine waving up and down a little bit. I don't know off the top of my head how to create a sine right away. Otherwise I would show you how to sort of make it look like he's breathing a little bit, but my point is, you can do a lot. This is very simple logic. The input action sprint is a custom input. For those who have a hard time with custom inputs, very simple. The IMC default data asset contains all of the inputs that you have, and you don't need to do anything with this yet. Just know that IMC default is where your inputs are, and then your inputs are stored as IA underscore. So for example, IA sprint. You can create a new input by finding one that makes sense. So if I wanted to have a button to, I don't know, make my character really, really big, I could take something like IA shoot, which is a one-click action, make a duplicate of that, name it like IA big, and then what I can then do is go into IMC default, new mapping, IA big, set the button to like U, and then if I wanted to, I could do IA big as an event, and then basically whenever I press the U key, it would trigger instead. So that's how I'm doing that. This is all the logic here. Simple, easy, effective tutorials, video games. We love to see it. Anyway, time to disappear for another 4 years.